Hello, I'm Robin Wilson. I'm a social scientist here at The Ohio State University. On this project, I'll be working with several of my colleagues on the farmer decision-making component, trying to have a better understanding of how farmers will respond to some of the potential changes in policy and environmental conditions. Specifically, this video about Objective 3 is designed to introduce you to how our project will integrate behavioral models with spatial land use and watershed models. This component of the project is meant to increase the sensitivity of our regional economic model to the reality of decision-making at the field level in agriculture. So where exactly does this piece of the project fit in? Well, you may have seen this complex graphic before, but the important information here is that Objective 3 encompasses the research being done at a watershed scale. These insights learned at the watershed scale will be used to inform the regional economic model highlighted in other videos. Specifically, we will model how farmers' land use and management decisions change in response to conditions like new policies, shifting food and energy prices, and changes in water quality outcomes. We will do this with a set of economic and behavioral models of farmer decision-making. The individual decisions will be used to predict likely changes in land use and associated management patterns. Using these patterns, we can predict how crop and energy production may change in the future, as well as how downstream nutrient loadings may change. We will do this with a set of spatial land use and watershed models. We can assess how changes in nutrient loading lead to economic costs and benefits through a set of existing ecological and economic models. Ultimately, we will model how these combined changes in crop and energy production and ecosystem services like clean water may influence the regional economy. The sum of these costs and benefits that result from the policy, market, and environmental changes will in turn inform our understanding of farmer behavior as it is represented in the regional economic model. Now let's break this down and hear a bit more about each of these three pieces and why they are important to understanding the impacts of deglobalization on the regional economy. To begin, why the behavioral models? Well, sometimes we oversimplify how people might respond to different policies. For example, not all farmers will respond the same way to changing energy prices or public pressure to increase the use of conservation practices. We expect that sensitivity to profit might vary based on a set of other relevant values, such as one's concern about the environment, leading to variation in how farmers respond to changing economic conditions. Truly understanding these land use and management decisions represented here in these images requires understanding these varying motivations and constraints that lead to different choices. To provide a bit more detail, in the past, our team has modeled the likelihood that an individual farmer will have a particular conservation practice in place given a set of certain characteristics. We've looked at a variety of farm and farmer characteristics, such as age, total farmed acres. We've also looked at behavioral beliefs, such as farmers' confidence in their ability to adopt conservation practices. We find from this prior work that the best predictor of conservation practice adoption is increased confidence in one's ability to implement the practice and perceived effectiveness of the recommended practices. Although these early results are helpful, we need your help to think about the characteristics and beliefs that may be important to understanding an even broader set of land use and management decisions. Ultimately, with this understanding of farmer decision-making, we can then model how different policies might lead to changes in behavior, such as incentive-based programs aimed at conservation or outreach efforts aimed at promoting more local foods. This leads us to our next set of models. So why land use models? To simulate the effect of changing conditions, it's not enough to understand the individual responses of a farmer to the policy. It's the aggregation of all land managers and their decisions across space that will determine the total environmental and economic impacts. Therefore, we need a spatial model to represent the distribution of land uses and management practices in the watershed and the changes that follow the implementation of a policy or other changes in market or environmental conditions. For example, this map shows the crop rotation pattern of all agricultural fields in the Maumee watershed from 2006 to 2009. We can use the results of the decision-making model to predict how a farmer with a given set of beliefs, values, and characteristics is likely to change his crop choice or other management choices. Combining these results with spatial data on existing land uses and management patterns, such as the data in this map, will allow us to develop a spatial prediction model that represents the changes in crops and land management outcomes across the watershed. Finally, this brings us to our last set of models, the watershed models. It is important to understand how potential changes in land use and land management will impact both economic and environmental conditions, such as downstream water quality. Watershed models allow users to test various scenarios of land use and land management changes to understand how changes in things like climate, land use, and land management might impact water quality throughout a watershed. Data collected from the edge of field and internal stream gauges, including at the watershed outlet, allows for models to be calibrated to observed trends. This improves our confidence that the field level building blocks of the model can accurately simulate the effects of different behaviors. Watershed scale simulations are then scaled up from the water quality data collected from the edge of field. Results from the edge of field are used as a comparison to validate that the watershed model is producing results in the realm of possibility. As new data become available, watershed models can be improved to better represent management occurring on fields throughout the watershed. In sum, the main goal of this portion of the project is to translate individual choices at the field level into watershed scale simulations to assess the environmental and economic impacts of various policy and behavioral drivers. These insights will be used to improve our representation of farmer decision-making in our regional economic model, DRFEWS. Over the coming months, we will be interacting with our advisory groups to get input on the land use and management decisions of greatest consequence and the likely drivers of these decisions to ensure that our models of changing land use and associated outcomes will be as realistic and useful as possible.